Yep. So as you can see, back at the truck. No, I'm not. So I thought I'd give you an update on the truck though. It's been a while since I've mentioned it. I think I've mentioned it, but I haven't really talked too much about it. Now, as you know, we were having some issues with low oil pressure. We kept getting a code that said that it was shutting off the second stage oil pump switch. So on these kinds of variable valve timing solenoid things, some of them have a second stage. So you have your low pressure oil pump and then a high pressure oil pump. So we weren't getting the high pressure. So did a variety of things. I changed the oil pressure sensor, and that didn't do anything. Changed the variable valve. Oh, that's the first thing I did was change variable valve timing solenoids. Change those. Then the switch, or the sensor, not the switch, the sensor. Then I thought, well, maybe the aftermarket solenoids were bad, so I changed those again. And then I changed the oil pressure sensor again, and I got the not the OEM, but the AutoZone brand, Duralast maybe. I don't remember. And that was pretty expensive. Huge price increase from the aftermarket. The aftermarket was 20 bucks or 30 bucks, and the AutoZone was 100 bucks. And that seems to have worked. Now, admittedly, I also changed the oil again. I changed it twice. I changed it, and I put the 5W20 in it, right here. 5W20. And the 5W20, I saw some water. I think it's rained so much, I think it's gotten in there. So the 5W20, I changed it. Of course, you warm up the engine to change it. And it was just a little bit warmer than my touch. It didn't burn me. And it just poured out like water. And I'm thinking, okay, so I'm supposed to be using 5W20. But one of the things that was made very clear in the code, because you get a code, is you may have the wrong oil. And I kept thinking, no, I don't have the wrong oil. So I changed the oil and put 5W20 in it, just to make sure that I didn't mess up the last time I changed the oil. And so I knew it was 5W20. I even saved the bottle just in case. And well, when I changed the switch, or the sensor, to the $100 sensor, I also changed the oil to 5W30, which is a thicker at warmer temperatures. The 30 is what we're worried about, the 20 and the 30. The 5 is 5W. It's not weight, it's called winter, 5 winter. So again, I've put the 5W30 in there, and we have run it, I would say, about 300 miles now. And we've taken it on the hilliest road that we possibly can take. So in the town. And I've taken it twice now. We went over there. So what it was in the past is, how do I explain this? We knew we was losing power because the solenoids weren't working. So when I would go up those hills, it would go up to 3,500. It would shift gears. You go up a hill and it downshifts a little bit. And so you can get more power, ratio. And it would go up to about 3,500, 32 to 3,500. And the oil pressure was only getting up to 68. Well, supposedly, anytime you get above 3,000 RPMs, you were supposed to be getting up to 75 PSI oil pressure. And so we were, 8 PSI low. And so I kept thinking, okay, that's why it's triggering. So I kept thinking, maybe the oil pump's bad or the sensor's bad, because we're not getting up to enough RPMs. And that's not correct, enough pressure. The secondary pump was not putting out enough pressure. Now this thing has 92,000 miles on it, so it's starting to get up to age. I guess they consider anything over 75,000 high mileage is what they're calling it. So 92,000 is high mileage. I've taken care of, changed every time. You're supposed to change the oil, the whole thing. So now it's not coating. So what it's doing now when we go over those hills is it shifts, and it only goes up to just 2,900 to 3,000 RPMs. And it gets up to about 68 PSI. So we're not going over to the 3,000, which is great. That's actually really good. You're not really supposed to run over 3,000 as it is. So the 3,000 RPMs is getting us over the hills with plenty of power. As a matter of fact, if I'm not careful, I will start to speed up on hills now. Whereas before with the 3,500, I wasn't getting up, you know, I was still losing speed going up the hill. But now we're gaining speed. So, but I've been a little fearful of actually gunning it to see if we can get it to do anything else. You know, 4,500 RPMs or something like that. Because we have triggered the code by going up above like 4,500 or something. So the other day we were coming back from town, and there is this one monster hill, and we were being tailed pretty closely by a car. So I was trying to keep 55 as perfectly as I could because I wanted to test the car, but I had this guy on my tail and he just would not let up. So we went up this hill, and I'm at the 3,000 RPMs, and I'm trying to keep the 55, and I didn't even press the gas. The truck just shifted gears on its own, and it shot up to 4,500 RPMs. I didn't mean to. I was trying to avoid that. And the oil pressure gauge went up to 74 PSI. So 75 is what it says online, but 74, I guess the truck thought, oh, that's fine. So 74. And I told Carolyn, if it's going to code, it's going to code now. And so the computer's got to run through the system. It runs through the system every 2 or 3 minutes. And we waited 2 or 3 minutes, nothing. No codes. So waited, well, drove all the way home, nothing. So I had a nightmare about it that night. I just, for some reason, I told myself it coded. I don't know why I did that. So next day, we took the same route. We didn't go all the way into town. We just took the same route. And still, no codes. I think we have resolved our problem. Now, as I've said before, there has been commenters who were very adamant that I either stop working on it because I'm just wasting money, or it's a transmission. They were convinced either stop working on it or it's the transmission. And let's just say that I take the cumulative cost of everything I put into it. I keep saying it's $180 because what I was actually trying to fix with the solenoids and the sensor and all that was $180. That being said, I did change the oil twice. That's not a bad thing. So let's take that into consideration. Let's say that's another $100 with the oil change and the filter and all that. So now I'm up to $280. I changed the PCVs, which has nothing to do with anything. That was just maintenance. But let's say that's another 40 bucks. So now we're up to what, $290. What else did I do? Oh, all the gas we used, run it around. Let's say there's another 50 bucks. So now we're up to 340 bucks to determine if we could get this car fixed. And I mean, really, what money did I waste? I have new solenoids. I was going to change those anyways because these were going to wear out at some point. I have a new sensor, which I was going to have to change anyways because it was going to wear out at some point. I have new oil, which is, there's nothing wrong with changing the oil too much. It's actually pretty good for it, especially for a higher mileage. As a matter of fact, we have decided to change the oil more frequently. We were changing it, you know, we have that oil monitor and it tells us when to change it. We were changing it at 1%. When it gets down to 1%. We are going to start changing it at 50%. So, because the engine is getting older. But the thing I'm trying to get across to the viewers is, what have I learned from this? And I've learned so much. One thing I learned, and I think is I just aggravated, I didn't know this before. I used to always get my truck temperature, the thermometer on the dashboard, up to temperature. So even if we're just running over to the little Dollar General down the road, I would drive past just to make sure that we got that thermometer up to temperature. Or I take the long route. You know, we can take this gravel road a little scenic route. I take that just so we can get up to temperature. And I always assumed that was enough, but it's not. That temperature has nothing to do with preserving your oil or your engine. Water and fuel will accumulate in the oil, and you got to get that to burn off. Otherwise, your oil becomes has less viscosity. So you got to get that up to temperature, up to 212 degrees at least, for 10 to 15 minutes. Well, most of the driving we do, we never get that up to temperature. I didn't know that. I just assumed the thermometer was all I had to do. I don't know if I assumed it or if I was told that, but I've been doing that most of my life, well, all my life. When I first learned about it, I was probably in my 20s when I realized you got to get that up to temperature. So it's damaging if you don't get the oil up to temperature. 10 to 15 minutes, you got to run that thing. So we're going to start changing our pattern, our behavior. We go to Dollar General quite often, 2 to 3 times a week, and to buy cottage cheese and different things for snacks. We don't have enough cooler space to get large quantities of food. So we just go down there and grab our cottage cheese a couple times a week and come back home. So we're going to change that. What we're going to do is once a week, we are going to go to the town and get big containers of cottage cheese and all our eggs and all the stuff once a week. Now, we don't go to town but maybe once a month. But now we're going to go once a week. Even if it's just to get the cottage cheese and stuff, we're going to get a second cooler. That way we got enough room to store it. That way, we will probably be driving just a little bit more per week than going to Dollar General 2 or 3, 4 times a week, whatever we go. But the engine will last longer, even though we're driving just a few more miles. And when I say a few, maybe like 2 or 3 more miles. But the engine's going to last longer because we make sure all that oil is got the water and the fuel burned out of it. And some of the other things I've learned about oils. For example, in the wintertime, we probably won't do it because we never drive when it's really cold outside in case we get stuck or stranded or whatever. We don't want to be out there. So we just make sure that if it's going to get below 0, we don't go anywhere. But if we were out driving, if you use 0W, you can get up to negative 42 degrees to start your engine, whereas 5W gets you down to negative 22. Well, we're never that cold here. Since we've moved here, we're not getting below negative 6. Again, we don't drive that cold, so we'll be fine with the 5W30, and the 30 is when the oil is hot. That's the viscosity when it's hot. But there's some other things that I've learned that I think is important for the lawnmower business. I used to say all the time, and I've done a little bit of studying just for the lawnmower, but a lot of people say you got to use zinc, you got to use zinc, got to use zinc oils for lawnmowers because they have lifters with the flat tappets. And I kept saying, no, you don't have to have zinc anymore. The modern day oils have enough chemicals in it. So where this myth came up at is zinc sticks to the walls of your engine. And so it basically is providing metal on top of your metal. So that zinc sticks to the metal. And so when it wears away, more zinc's added and so forth and so on. The problem is back in the 90s, they used to add detergents in the oil. So in order to compensate for the detergent, they would have to add more zinc. And it became a rotating nightmare is what it ended up doing. Well, in modern day oils, they've removed all the zinc, most of the zinc, but the oil blend is better. So you don't need the zinc, even in tappets. If you go buy just regular Walmart oil or even synthetic oil, all that oil or all that, the molecules of oil, I've watched about molecules of oil. In conventional oil, you may have a molecule that's real small and then a molecule that's real big and small and big and small. Well, the problem with that is as the oil gets older, all those little molecules burn off, and which is what was needed to get into all the little cracks and crevices But it burns off, so now at the end of the oil life, you have only large molecules of oil. That's why you have to change conventional oil more often than synthetic oil, because synthetic oil, they're all the same size. So even if you're burning off some of that oil, you still have enough oil to get into the cracks and crevices. And then, for example, high mileage. If you have high mileage and you have lots of leaks and smoke and you use a lot of oil, you can get high mileage oil. And some of those high mileage oils, what they do is they rejuvenate the seals. Because over time, seals dry out, and so they try to rejuvenate. So like on this lawnmower, I'm not going to use just regular oil that you buy at Walmart. I bought the high mileage Pennzoil. And the reason I did that is because this has a lot of leaks. I'm not saying it's going to fix it, but why not try it, see if it's going to work. So I've learned a lot. Now, for $300 and some odd, what did we say, $350? Let's just call it $350. Not only did I fix the truck, I bought myself an education. So I think it's well worth it. So if you click this up next box, it'll take you to a video where I was working on a lawnmower on my other channel. So I hope I can inspire you to learn something so you can live your dreams. Thanks for watching.